A couple weeks back, I was talking about configuring Vim, and this is Neovim. And a lot of people, a lot of comments said, hey, try Neovim from Vim. And I've tried it. And I feel like a god when I use it because it is absolutely amazing. And I want to walk through kind of my beginner setup of Neovim because it is so powerful. Much more powerful than VS Code once I customized it to my needs, which kind of amazing. So whether I'm in Linux, whether I'm in Windows, whether I'm in macOS, I am in Neovim. Every single video I make on this channel has a web guide made from using Neovim because I'm able to do so many shortcuts, and it just makes it to where I can write a full article, a full script for a video, all of that in a matter of minutes, which is nuts, where most people are spending hours and doing all this outsourcing, and it's just, Neovim. Leverage it, learn it, love it. From a non-programmer standpoint, I will say I can't live without it because I use it for writing configuration files for like sysadmin work, or if I'm just working on configuring a system. Absolutely amazing. And then finally, the third distant one is programming and coding, which is what most people think of when they think of Neovim. Let's get on the desktop and I want to show you my configuration and maybe help you out, because from an intermediate standpoint, or kind of like that beginner to intermediate level, it's absolutely amazing. Now, if you're just getting started with Vim, check out my first video where I talk about basic things like Vim motion and just kind of how to speed up Vim, which is kind of cool. Now, I did buy like Modern Vim made by Drew Neal off of Amazon. So we're going to talk about that book and just technical novels in general, because it's really hard to stay up to date. And even Drew in this book mentions that, which is great. But a lot of the ideas in this book are still phenomenal today. So I wanted to kind of touch on that and kind of peruse what you might learn in these types of things. So let's get started with the setup, because the actual file structure in here, I have a plugins file, a Keymaps file, and then the initialization file. That's it. That's all you really need to start out with. And if you're like, what does Neovim do? I have two projects for you to actually kind of unlock kind of the potential of Neovim. So the first project, if you want to just get started in Neovim and just see everything it can do, these are great spots that kind of unlocked my mind and said, oh my goodness, you can do a whole lot. I didn't stay on these projects, but they were great to just kind of see the potential with Neovim. NVChad is the very first one I wanted to kind of call out because it's amazing. It basically gives all the functionality of a VS Code with just all the benefits and movement of Vim. And wow, phenomenal job. Love the project. And it really kind of opened my eyes and go, wow, I have a lot to learn before I can achieve this type of level. But I used it for a bit, like several weeks, and I was like, ooh, okay, this is cool. I want to learn how to do some of this stuff. It just didn't quite suit my needs, or it was a little bit too much for me where it got in the way when I went to go writing. So a little too many functions for me and too many plugins, where I kind of wanted a little more basic setup. But fantastic for realizing, wow, it does all these things. Same goes for LunarVim. LunarVim's a full different fork of Neovim, but same thing as NVChad. It just, wow, so much stuff it does. It's extensible. There's so many cool things and videos on it. It's very, very cool for those that are really hardcore into programming. Both NVChad and LunarVim really lean heavily on LSPs and making code work so much faster right out of the gate. But they're both pretty complex projects, and it just didn't quite suit what I wanted to do. So, but I wanted to at least give them a shout out because they're fantastic projects. And if you're just like, I have no idea what Vim does and I don't want to spend hours setting it up, by all means, these are great starting points, and you can just kind of work around these projects where you get most of the benefits that you'd set up with a little bit of customization. But that's not what I did. Obviously, this is my file. Looks a little bit like what they did, but not nearly as powerful as them because I'm only using 3 files. And I first want to kind of break down each file. I'm going to go pretty quick here, but I want to kind of touch on things I learned in the book and things I changed from the book, because that's one thing that you kind of have to do. You got to take some of the things and go, okay, I see where this is going, what a professional might do here. Let me see if there's something better, maybe something easier. So that's kind of what I've done. So we're going to first start with the init file. Init file, you first do your requires, almost like a header, where you're like, okay, I'm going to call keymaps.lua from the Lua directory. I'm going to call my plugins. These are going to load my keymaps and my plugins, of course. And then impatient, that's just a plugin that makes Vim load a little faster. And then the basic configuration. Now, you might notice if you're coming from Vim, these are Lua commands, and Lua commands are a little bit funky. Like you can see this function expand, because initially when I first set this up, I didn't do the function expand, and it just made a whole bunch of directories with a little tidly.vim undo directory wherever that file is located. And fun fact here, I actually ended up deleting my whole home directory because I was going to delete a directory with this shortcut key, this little tidly. I was like, oh no, oh, I'm such an idiot. But you'll run into like happy accidents like that when you're first learning this. That was just a fun tidbit. But the rest of this is mostly basic Vim commands that have been converted into these option Lua things. And if you don't want to use this, by all means, you have the old way where you can just do basic Vim commands, old Vim script right here. So I kind of broke those into two different sections. So when I need to go back and I'm like, I can't find a good Lua command to do like set spell, I'm going to just toss it into old Vim commands. Or sometimes when you're in the help, and you can actually go around and do this. So like, let's say you're going to set your settings, user manual 5, will hold control and press the right bracket, and you'll see there's all these different commands. Now, obviously, these commands here are old Vim script. This is not a Lua command. So let me just yank this file. Let's say we wanted to toss this in this one. We're just going to paste it, and we could easily just kind of line this up and go, okay, let's push that over. And this would add this command directly in here because it's using old Vim script. Just know that this is kind of how I like to set it up. Now, some people don't set up Neovim this way. Some people use an init Vim that uses the old Vim script. That just didn't make much sense to me. Why would you use an init Vim when you have init Lua? Just use Vim, regular Vim, without Neovim if you're just going to use Vim script the whole time. So that's why I set up init Lua instead of init Vim. Speaking of the directory, we're going to just jump to that. We're going to go just cd.config in Vim where the configuration lives and do a listing. If this says init.vim, that'll take precedent and it will load the init.vim, not init.lua. So you usually want to pick init.lua or init.vim and just know that they're going to look drastically different between the two. I recommend init.lua using this format. Now, the other two files I created, the plugin directory is actually auto-created. Let's cd into Lua, do a listing, and you'll see the keymaps and plugins right here. And then I have a couple custom functions in here. There's an error in Windows, specifically when you're using PowerShell. I created a little function to suppress that error. It's just like this weird writing error that I had to make this function for. So that's added in there because I wanted universal basic Neovim everywhere, to where when I was trying to use like NVChat and I was pulling into Windows, man, it was just, it was a nightmare because I had to make so many, cross functions things where NVChat was really meant for Linux. And I wanted this to be more universal for any system. And then we have the plugin configuration. So the plugin configuration, there's a lot of things that go into, but before we get into configuring these plugins, we loaded them already. So let's first visit the keymaps, the plugins, and then the configuration. So what I'll do is Shift FF, and we're just going to go up to keymaps. Now this is a fuzzy finder, but this uses Telescope now instead of FZF from Vim. So this actually got done in this book. They did an entire fuzzy finding chapter, but unfortunately it was the older plugin where I moved on to Telescope because I thought Telescope was just a little bit more powerful. So that's why I moved from Telescope to FZF, which this book still had the old stuff. Now this book was made in 2018, so 4 years ago. So it's not a knock on the author. It's just things move so fast. Some of these plugins change. You can see how I did my keymaps, all this done in Lua. I've seen people do traditional Vim script, which is also very good. So I changed all this out to Lua based because I think within Vim, you need to learn Lua and start using it. So that's why I did it this way instead of using Vim script, which is a theme you're probably going to hear me say a bunch in this video. But this is just a very basic key mapping. Nothing too crazy here, just some quality of life things I like. So that's key mapping. Let's move on to plugins now, loading plugins. The big thing here is I use Packer. Packer is like the modern day. Again, in this book, I think they were wanting to use MinPack, which is a bit older plugin. Packer came about, I think, several years ago, and I found it just to be a lot more intuitive, a lot better, also a little more powerful, and a little bit more noob friendly. Now, when I'm setting this up, I did make a project on GitHub under Neovim, and there's a setup file that I put right here. You'll notice Packer on the very top line there. That just sets up Packer in the actual system that you're using, creates any directories that you need, clears out any existing Neovim configuration. So if you do run this script, it will wipe out any existing configuration of Neovim, and then just sets it up kind of how I've set it up in my systems across the board. So this is what this one does for a setup script. There is also a Win setup. So if you use PowerShell at all, this one was a little more involved and it's still not very complete. So if you are using Windows, just know this script just kind of gives you the basics. There's certain things that you need to do, from environmental variables in Windows to installing like Node.js with all the fixins, and just some basic executable type stuff of how it interacts with Neovim. So I found the Windows setup of Neovim much more complex, a little bit harder. It's pretty much going to be its own video if I have enough interest. Let me know in the comments if you do use Neovim in Windows like me. I have a feeling I'm probably a very, very small 0.5% of a percent. But if not, let me know. Because many people just use like WSL and launch Neovim that way, where I like to stay native with PowerShell. But having said that, let's get back into the plugins file. This is all just a copy paste from the actual Packer setup. This initializes Packer, gets it all ready for you. So I didn't write any of this. This is just kind of the basic header of all the plugin Vim files out there. And then the meat and potatoes here is the Packer startup. And this is where I actually add all of the plugins. Now you could actually configure the plugins as you initialize them and use them in Packer. I chose to kind of break that out. I wanted to load all the plugins first and then configure them separately. And then that way all my configurations in one spot, because this file could get really bloated and I kind of wanted to stay away from that. So most of my loads are just 1 or 2 lines to load each plugin. Quick breakdown of the plugins I'm using. Packer, of course, for that. Planetary is a dependency for many plugins. WebDev, WebTree kind of gives you that file explorer. And then, toggle term. This is actually kind of a cool one that I thought was really interesting. We can do Control X to launch into a terminal and do ls. I'm still working on some of the customization and making it all cool, but there's Neovim introduces a lot of things from regular Vim, such as terminal buffers, and it can actually run things simultaneously. I think you could even expand Neovim to be almost its own window manager. We're starting to get into like Emacs territory and those types of things, but really cool stuff. I love this, but for now, I just kind of want to mention that was kind of what this plugin does, is with the toggle term function, just to add something. If I just need to run a quick command, I can do that. Obviously, since I'm in Linux and I have my own, a lot of times I'm pulling up a full terminal over here. But to each his own, I still like the function being there. And then the project file, that's when I'm like doing a leader key FP. This pulls up my latest GitHub projects. That's what that plugin does. Impatient, faster startup. Smarter indenting. This is basically means when I'm hitting enter on a line, it's just giving me that proper indent. Alpha in Vim, this is my dashboard. This is like the starting up when you launch Vim for the first time, when we do Vim. This gives it this nice little backup and says, hey, here's your most recent files. Here's the most recent files for the directory you're in right now. And it kind of shows you what you've been working on. So if you want to just launch into, say, reagent C, I just did a video on that. We could just go 3. It's going to pull up that markdown file, and then I can directly edit it, which is pretty darn slick, man. LSP and linting. Now, this is really interesting. This is starting to get into the programming aspect, and I said I'm not really a programmer. A lot of times I will dabble in programming, but by no means am I a professional in this regard. But in the 90s, I did a lot of programming, mostly C++. And back then, a lot of the compilers, I think I was using like Borland compiling, had really rudimentary error checking. And this is where like language servers kind of came about in the past couple years. And it's really kind of cool. And I've seen some programmers start to play with this, and it got me really interested in programming again. But it's like a new way of kind of error checking as you're going. It's giving you live feedback and saying, hey, we should just auto complete it to this, or hey, this syntax is wrong, or you're missing this bracket as you're going, much like VS Code does. And I think most of this originated from Microsoft, actually. It's just they open sourced the LSP. So that's good guy Microsoft for you. Doesn't happen very much in my videos where I'm like, good job, Microsoft, but LSPs are pretty cool. The second thing is linting. This is more traditional programming, where usually on save, you might lint a file. I'm kind of old school, and I personally love linting, and I don't really like LSPs. I've done both for writing like articles. A lot of times when I'm pulling up an article, or usually it'll run like a linting and say, okay, well, that's some improper grammar. I don't think I have my grammar plugin loaded here, but it would lint the file after I saved. I kind of like this, where LSPs will do it in real time, where it'll actually suggest as I'm typing and say, hey, do you mean this word? So you don't have to type out the whole word. I don't particularly like that because it kind of takes me out of that creative space. But linting will wait until you exit insert mode, and as soon as you save the file, it'll lint it and say, oh, well, you did improper grammar or that. But I do LSPs for a lot of my spelling. So like when I'm spelling something and I'm like, hey, super. Oh, it's okay. Hey, that's misspelled. So it gives me a little squiggly line. So I might exit out of that and then just come back and do like a Z enter and go, oh, well, I meant to say super. Of course, just to give you a demonstration of linting and LSPs and kind of the difference between real-time feedback and linting. Still rudimentary understanding from my part, but I at least want to kind of lay it out there, and you can kind of pick and choose. And that's where a lot of this configuration comes in. Other plugins here, like Tree Sitter, is a really cool file-based plugin. I do just leader F, I think is what I have Tree Sitter bound to. It pulls up a file directory. So instead of doing FF for Fuzzy Finder, this does a full file directory. And then I can actually bust into each directory, expand, and say, okay, well, I want to open up plugins, and it would open up plugins. Or if I come back, I want to open up Keymaps, I'd open it up there, which is kind of cool. So I'm going to just do a leader F to hide that again. I just want to show it. Get signs just shows the current get, hey, is this up to date? Do you need to do a pull, a push, get, fetch, all those things? Clipboard image is something kind of custom. I took this project and expanded it in the configuration so I can paste images directly into Markdown files. It goes ahead and compresses the image, copies the image, puts it into a directory, and then puts the entire Markdown syntax directly in the file. So think of it as just like pasting images on steroids, basically. This is where most of the power in writing a lot of the articles comes from, and why I use that custom function. Undo tree, just do a F5, and usually this gives you all the different things, all the different changes in this specific file. I haven't really made any changes on this system, so there's nothing there to undo. Whack It Time is where I record anything I'm in. If I'm editing a file, I like to record it, so it kind of tells me the progress, how much I'm actually making towards either coding or programming or writing. All these things I track because it reinforces a positive behavior. So if I'm not sitting here to like just watching YouTube videos or checking Twitter and all these other waste of times, I need to look at that and go, oh, you know what? I got in 3 hours worth of actually being in Neovim. I'm doing a good job. I'm learning. I'm bettering myself. And that's kind of what I use Whack It Time for. Autosave, this is just coming from insert mode, out of insert mode, and then it autosaves the file every time that happens. Now, a lot of people aren't going to want to do that for like a plugins file, because if we actually change something, it's going to rebuild all the plugins, which is kind of interesting. So let's say we do an output right here. I'm like, okay, we're done. Autosave. Typically, this will go and rebuild all the Packer stuff right here. This can get really annoying when you're constantly reloading every plugin, where it's like, oh no, this is not good. So I'm going to quit that, delete this file, and again, It's constantly updating. So we don't want that. What we can do is toggle save. It's called AS toggle, autosave toggle. So this will turn autosave off. So then I can edit stuff and go, okay, test, exit out. And I don't have to worry about it rebuilding things. And then I can just do autosave toggle on, or I can bind this to a key in my Keymaps. You get the idea, but just kind of show you that. True Zen, when I'm writing, sometimes I don't want all these relative line numbers and other stuff. So I'll do this, and then I just write my stuff, and it's a little more concentrated, focused setting. So that's what I use True Zen for. You can do very different True Zen. If I wanted the full width here, I could do a different layout in True Zen, but very powerful stuff. And that's basically the only plugins I'm doing, a pretty basic setup to start with. But coming back into the init file, once you've loaded those plugins, a lot of the plugins require configuration on launch. Since we touched on that and I was looking at the files, down here you can see what I'm loading. And sometimes it doesn't set up things properly, or maybe I didn't grab a style file, or something's not working on this system. This happens a lot in Neovim, where you might be like, oh, okay, I grabbed someone's file or my file. It's working on his system, but it's not working on my system. What's going on here? This is the most powerful command, and probably after importing a configuration or a basic configuration, what you need to do is a check health. This is a colon, check health, and what it does is it goes through and says, hey, what are you missing in this system? Composer I'm not actually using, so let's install Composer. These aren't necessarily errors that would prevent a plugin from running, but there's certain things that do error out that do prevent those plugins from running. So I want to touch on that. We've installed Composer, so this error should go away. Now, moving back down, let's see what else we got. Null LS. When I talked about linting and LSPs, null LS is like how it would interact with a traditional old school linter. LSPs are more like loaded like libraries, where linting happens kind of as an external process almost, and null LS bridges the gap between Neovim and that external process and then lints it. Write good, which is kind of what I use for grammar, which is kind of funny, like the grammar plugin's called Write Good, but that's kind of funny. Let's see if Write Good's even installed on this system. So to fix this, there's a plugin I have called Mason. And Mason, if we pull it up, will show you everything that's installed and run commands directly on your terminal to install and expand them. It'll also do updates. So we see that there's an LSP update, Marksman, which is a linter for Markdown, Style UA. I think that's also a Lua styling plugin. So if we hold Shift and press U, it'll actually go through and update all of those. And if there's an error, it'll say, hey, you're missing Python, or you're missing whatever it is. So really cool plugin. Mason's huge. It's something I found, and I was like, man, this is great. I think I actually saw that MV Chad was using this and kind of was like, okay, I need to add that. That was super cool. But obviously our linting is not working. So we're going to go number 4, come over to linting and say, you know what? We're missing some stuff. We're missing Write Good. So we'll come down here, just press I. So this is using npm, which is Node.js. If you got an error, you would need to install like an apt install npm or an apt install Node.js, and that would fix any of these things. But coming back into our write health, this should be fixed now. And let's launch back into Vim. And let's go back into that reagent C, and then you can start to see, oh, okay, well, it's saying certain things about our grammar now, saying, hey, this is a weak meaning. This weakens the meaning, UEFI only. And maybe if this was a complete sentence, this would be correct. But these simply commands, like another method to reach this screen is to simply have to boot at fail time 3 times. What does simply add to it? It doesn't. It just weakens the meaning of that paragraph. I love this because, one, it's going to fix some of my speech patterns in my YouTube videos over time, but also as I write it down, it's like, okay, instead of saying simply reboot, I'm just going to be like, now reboot your system. Rebooting system just sounds better. And obviously writing, it does sound better too. So I love this plugin. So let's get rid of that. Simply reboot. That doesn't even make sense. A reboot, when it starts, it will boot, process will work. Wow. How late was I when I did this? And then we have this down here. It says many is a weasel word in weekend meeting. So many tools to choose from. So maybe instead of this, let's delete 2 words. The tools to choose from that I could write a book. So this whole paragraph's pretty terrible. Let's just go to the end, delete the start, say, okay, much better. Okay, cool. This just kind of shows you the different ways of writing and kind of makes you a better writer, a better speaker while using Write Good. I just want to kind of show this plugin in action where I wrote a bad article, or not necessarily a bad article, but broken English article that could be a little bit better and written. And I'm going to continue doing this, and hopefully in the end, it'll make me a little bit better. Thanks, Neovim. And I like the way it's done, where VS Code could probably do the same thing with like Grammarly plugin and some other things. This is a personal preference between like VS Code, because VS Code can do all these things as well. So let's double check that we fixed our check health. Now, obviously, we've already seen that the linting is working properly, but you'll probably see that like Composer's there, Write Good is now reading an okay. These types of things will fix up your Neovim instance. So if there is something not working in your Neovim, doing a check health is just awesome. It's a great way to kind of lead you to whatever's going wrong or not working. I think this is a good starting point. Clone my project, take it out for a spin. Just know that there's so much more we can improve upon here. And I look forward to revisiting this in like 6 months to a year as I'm really enjoying writing into it. But again, this all boils down to personal preference. I just wanted to give people a different view of something. It's not to say Neovim's better than VS Code. It's just a different way of doing things, and I think it's faster for me and my personal preference. Many people aren't going to like this setup. Many people are going to think that's too cumbersome and too big of a learning curve. I'm just going to continue using VS Code, which is fine. I'm just saying you can be more productive. You can be a faster writer. You can be a faster programmer, all with the assistance of Neovim after you learn it, which that's a big ask. So as far as buying modern Vim and those types of things, I would say this is a supplemental book. I think doing Vim Tutor, doing the help manual, just doing :help from prompt and pulling this up, like help user dash manual, go through this first. If you don't understand this and you're not doing Vim Tutor, these books will not help you. These books just kind of give you an idea of what to do. Like the plugins in here were already out of date. It was using MinPack instead of Packer. It was using FZF instead of Telescope. All these things in Neovim that you might use. So a modern Vim from 2018, a good book to kind of open your mind of what it should be. Just know that the plugins and those types of things have pretty much moved on from what this book offered. So I'm still thankful that I bought the book, as it did open my eyes to certain things like terminal and some of the things that Neovim's capable of. And it just kind of evolved from there. And that's just technical book writing in a nutshell. So with that, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one.